Today we're here in the village of Chawton in Hampshire, England, and we're at what Jane Austen called the Great House. And I've brought you here to meet with the librarian to discuss two really special collections that are housed here. And I've brought you because I've just completed a project that I was really honoured to be asked to assist. It was to help with the development of an online version of the library that Jane Austen visited, knew well, and from whose books there are direct references in her works. Dr. Bevan is the librarian here, so let's go inside and meet him.
Hello, nice
Hello,
to meet you.
Darren.
Do come in.
Thank you.
Okay, would you like to come through to the Great Hall?
Thank you. Wow.
Hello and welcome. Well, welcome to the Great Hall. In fact, it was only called the Great Hall from the 19th century. Before that, it was simply the drawing room here. But as you can see, it is a lovely space.
Quite a drawing room.
It is a lovely space, isn't it? And parts of this date from the late 16th century, which you can see
on the fireplace.
On the back plate on the fireplace. That's right. Yes. And this is the first place that the public would come when they see this house. So it's quite a great introduction to Chawton House. And we have some of the paintings here by some of our female writers.
Yeah, George
so
Sand,
George Sand, that's right, and perhaps the most famous one, Mary Robinson over there. There's so much that people can see when they come here.
Can I look?
Yes, of course you can. Do have a look in there. And, you can see the secret passageway that would go through to the servant quarters.
It's a cutaway, isn't it?
That's right. If you like to go into the dining room here.
Oh, wow. Isn't this grand?
It's a lovely place, isn't it? Lovely room, yes. And this is the actual table.
Where Jane sat.
Where Jane sat and where she dined. So it's one of the original pieces of furniture here, which is rather special. So this is a portrait here of Edward Knight in all his finery, depicting his travels through Europe when he's doing his grand tour. And in fact, you can see one of his actual suits there from when he was an adolescent as well. And also in the display cabinet, which is rather special, is actually his own handwriting here. So this is his own.
See if I can recognise any of it.
See if you recognise it from your work here. That's
Yeah.
right. So it's basically reports on his travels that he did from Gomersham Park through France to Neuchâtel in Switzerland.
The detail in here. Look at even the wonderful window knobs.
Yes.
So artistic, isn't it?
Very much so.
So, this is a starting point.
Yes. What we have here basically is our collection of women writers in this room here. So books, both fact and fiction, so plays, poetry, novels, but also books on history, education, travel, cookery, all sorts of books here we have in our collection.
And what was the period that this whole collection covers? 1600?
That's a good question. From the 17th century, that's right up until we say 1830. And we have two collections here. So we have a collection of women writers, which you can see here, and also books that belong to the Knight family. And I guess we'll be exploring these ideas a bit later on. Yes.
Go down to mission control.
Okay. So I've collected a few items here. Would you like to see what I have?
So Darren, you've very kindly bought some books for us to have a look at.
Yes.
What have you got for us?
Right, okay. Well, first here, we have the library catalogue from Gomersham Park. This dates from 1818, which is the year after Jane Austen died. And it's a fascinating document because basically it tells us what books Jane Austen had access to when she went to visit her brother Edward at Gomersham Park. So if I turn this over very carefully, it is a handwritten document and it's got all sorts of treasures here of books. So, and interestingly, it tells us where, what column it is, what shelf it is. So with this document, it would be very easy to recreate, her library using this data here. And in fact, we do have quite a few of these books still in our collection. In fact, over 1,000 volumes of these books.
Wow.
We still have in our basement.
It's so different seeing it like this and not in a spreadsheet.
That's right, that's right. So, and it includes books here. Well, I'll show you one, for example, here. There's one here called Self-Control by Mary Brunton in 3 volumes. And this one is quite important because we know Jane Austen actually read this particular book. She writes to her sister Cassandra that she's at Godmission Park and she's reading Self-Control. And in fact, we do have Self-Control here on the table as well.
Wow.
So if I very carefully close this up and bring forward Self-Control, we put them in these. We've had volunteers, book conservation volunteers, who very kindly created these boxes to house these books because they are so fragile. So if I move that over there, put this book here, we have here an actual book that Jane Austen had, and read. She wasn't very favourable in her comments on it, quite scathing in fact, but it is just lovely to have actual books here that she would have consulted in the collection. Very carefully. Well, what we've done is, as you know, we've both washed our hands and got clean hands here, and that's important. And people might ask why we're not using gloves, and the general thinking at the moment is that we don't have gloves. They can cause tears and torn pages when you turn items, and it's not necessarily that the gloves will be clean. They could be dirty gloves as well. So, and the idea is that researchers can come here and consult these books.
Well, that's one of the wonderful things about this house.
That's
isn't
right.
It? That you have so many people who do come here and do research.
Of course, we have Jane Austen in the collection here. So I'm going to bring out a copy of Emma here. And I suppose one reason I've just brought out Emma is the fact that some people say that Donwell Abbey in Emma was inspired by Chawton House itself, because Donwell Abbey was the house belonging to Mr. Knightley, the connection.
The Knight family, yeah.
So this is just a lovely illustration of Emma that we have here. This is the first time that you actually get her name, Jane Austen, attributed to the novel, and it's the first time that it's illustrated as well.
Was it her third novel by the time that she was actually allowed to
That's
put her
right,
name
yes,
to it?
yeah. Jane Austen's novels were never attributed to her in her lifetime. It was always by a lady or by the author of Pride and Prejudice, which was the most famous of her novels in her lifetime. This one is from 1833 by Richard Bentley, and it is the first time we have her name attributed to her novels, and the first time it's illustrated as well. Our collection spans from the 17th, 18th, early 19th century, and basically covers Jane Austen's contemporaries and her predecessors. We have a great collection of works by women writers, both in fact and fiction, from about three centuries here. And one of the ones we have is called Camilla by Frances Burney, which is a very rare book. So here we have Frances Burney, and this is a first edition of Camilla. It's actually very rare because it's actually never been bound. You can see the edges of it.
I can see the uncut edges.
It's the uncut edges, and it hasn't got the proper cover to it. This is the only time that Jane Austen's name appears in print during her lifetime. So we have Miss J. Austen of Steventon as one of the subscribers to Frances Burney's Camilla. Burney was a great favourite of Austen, her works, so it's only right that she was one of the subscribers here. And this is what we try and emphasise, is that a lot of our books here are kind of the books that Jane Austen would have read or would have loved, what we have in our collection here. So, and it is, and all these books are catalogued, so people can go to our website and see exactly what we have here.
And so if they're doing any particular subject or theme, they can look and see if you have the references that might be helpful to that.
Exactly, that's right. And then they can just book an appointment and come here and study any of these books that we have in our collection.
And thank you, I'm allowed to do that too.
You are. Well, the library is open to anyone, so
yes.
Anyone with a genuine interest in the collection. Of course, we are open to the public as a visitor attraction. If people want to come and explore the place, they can do. But also people with a genuine interest in the books, the collection, can book an appointment and come and research.
Well, I found the hardest thing about the work that I was doing was not reading the books.
Yes, I do find that.
Such temptation.
I do find that myself, that sometimes, you just want to lock yourself away for half a day downstairs and just to immerse yourself, I do take some of the modern books back home with me so I can read those, but the rare books obviously all stay here.
Yes,
and,
indeed.
Right. This room is by no means the extent of the collection. We have a lot more books down in the basement.
So this is where I worked, and we use these to look after the books so that their spines don't get damaged, and if you need to hold them open, you have these special beads to hold them open so that they stay at the page. I think they're lead. My skin diving records seem to indicate that that must be lead. And so this is where I worked with the books, and I was photographing the spines and other aspects of them that were revealing of the provenance that the books had. Some of them had things written inside them, and that was really difficult for me to be looking through every book and not reading it. It was some kind of exquisite torture, actually, but it was such an honor to be handling these books. And they range, as you can see, in size. There's the larger books and the smaller ones. And then over here, I'll show you some of the variety that we had. And when you're working, you have books that are quite sizable, like this one here. And then you have these tiny little books that you have to look inside to make sure that there's nothing written within, and still protect the book. So it's a very careful operation, and it was really a delight to be accessing such a wealth of information on so many subjects, and to know in many cases the family have written inside. So this is where I worked, and where over many months we photographed over 1,000 books for the collection, and it's been one of the great thrills of my great passion for literature and for books.
So, you like the staircase, don't you? I think in
I
particular,
do.
don't you? It goes more and more wonky the higher up you go.
I remember going up to your loft, your eyrie, and
Yes.
it's a staircase with character.
It is, isn't it? So here we are in the Oak Room. Perhaps one of the most pleasant features of this room is the landscape, is what you can see
it's
outside of here through the windows.
Wonderful. Look, the great drive
You can see the driveway down there, and you can see the estate here. And then there's also the grounds here, the wilderness, and the walled garden at the back. So there's lots to explore in the grounds as well here.
Yeah. And I'm sure, Darren, that she sat here.
It's
I'm
nice
sure
to think that Jane Austen may have sat there in that little alcove and seeing down the driveway who was coming up and down the driveway and all the activities that were going on in Chawton.
So Darren, thank you so much for the time that you've spent and showing us this amazing place.
You're very welcome.
Tell us about the opening hours and who can come here and when they can come here and what special events you have at seasons.
Right, well firstly, we are open to the public for most of the year. It's open 7 days a week, this place, and in the afternoons, so anyone can just turn up and explore the place.
And I know from having been here the diversity of interest that researchers have when they come here, and you also do book launches, don't you? Which is a great opportunity because you've got you're very active social media.
We have a variety of programme of events throughout the year to encourage people to come and...
When I first came to live in the area, and I of course went to Jane Austen's house, but I had no idea at the time that I first visited that this was here.
Well, you certainly would encourage anyone to go to Jane Austen's House Museum. It's a fascinating place and it's certainly worth a visit. But hopefully on the same day, perhaps then, or similar time, they can actually come here and visit us as well, because I think the two complement each other. Obviously Jane Austen's House Museum is all about her. This hopefully it'll broadens it a little bit in terms of talking about her brother and the great house that he owned, and also the other women writers that were around at the time. Our exhibition this year is on the Gothic, so we're focused on other writers like Mary Shelley and Anne Radcliffe, etc. So hopefully we think the two places do complement each other.
And the kitchen and the tea room that's located there in that wonderful kitchen that's just full of character, with its amazing tables, with its sinking, is also a place that people can just come and regularly to visit.
Right, to
and that's where we're headed. So thank you very much for
excellent.
all of the time that you've given to this interviews today.
That's right.
And thank you very much for the opportunity to have done the project in the first place.
You're very welcome. And on a day like this, it's just the perfect place to be. Not only the house, but also the gorgeous gardens, which you can see out there as well. There's so much to explore here.
Indeed.
Okay.
Thanks, Darren.
You're very welcome.
I've done some interesting work in many fields, but handling books that Jane Austen handled and finding handwritten comments like, "What an ugly dress," amazing. And I also found writings of other Knight family members, and some of them were on sheets inserted in the books and not read for hundreds of years. What a thrill. Meanwhile, if you come to England to see the Jane Austen house in the village of Chawton in Hampshire, walk a little further down the road to the big house, here, and sit where Jane sat and enjoy the vistas she enjoyed.